The Shroud of Turin is one of the most researched and studied relics in church history, and profoundly impacts many who encounter its mystery.
As a person of faith, looking at it through the eyes of faith, I don't think it can help but touch your heart.
Something that we can look on not only to bolster our faith in those moments of weakness, but also to deepen our faith and our appreciation, our intimacy with Christ.
Join Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry as they examine the science of the shroud through the lens of faith.
Really interesting scientific information that we didn't know about, like the pollen from all the different regions of the world. As the shroud traveled around, it picked that up. Some of the mites, things like that was really interesting to me. I mean, this made you really want to believe it a lot more.
It's impressive. Like, humanly, I don't think like that is another level of love. It's not I'm gonna say, like, oh, I love you, I'll give you a chocolate. No. I'm giving you more than my life. I'm giving you my suffering.
Asking both experts and disciples, who do you say I am?
As far as who the man of the shroud is, as a person of faith and kind of reviewing the evidence there, it seems that a convincing argument can be made that it's Jesus of Nazareth.
Visit patchworkheart.org/shroud to learn more and get exclusive behind-the-scenes updates for your support.
The St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation, in partnership with Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network, present a podcast for divorced and separated Catholics.
Hello, and welcome to a podcast from the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. This is Ann DeSantis, Executive Director, and I'm joined by our board president, Mickey Kelly. I just want to welcome him. Mickey, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Great to be here, Ann.
Yes, it's wonderful to do this very last podcast of the series of 10 tips for divorced and separated for healing, 10 steps for healing for Catholics affected by divorce. So now we did a podcast for every single one of those steps, and I'm just going to read through all of them, and then we're going to talk about the step 10, which is the one that we're going to discuss this evening. So our first one was acceptance of your situation with God's help. Number 2 is finding proper help and resources where needed. Number 3, stepping back from too many commitments to be with family. Number 4, seeking God's help through prayer and sacrifice. Number 5, developing your faith in greater ways. Number 6 is prayer. Number 7 is sharing your story with trusted friends to find guidance and fellowship. Number 8 is if you're not an old, find out more. Number 9 is develop healthy new friendships with those who have faith. And now we're at the very last one. Number 10 is to get involved in some ministry in order to help others. And so this series has been a blessing because I love the way that we have been able to articulate all the different steps with finding healing. And for those of you who are listening, if you're not familiar with the work of the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation, I'm just going to give you like a little background on us for our newcomers, is that we were founded in 2015 by the Mercedarian Religious Order. Some of the friars, our religious friars, had gone to the World Meeting of Families, where Pope Francis had come to Philadelphia. And after they left the conference, they said to themselves, you know what, this is a calling, because it's the World Meeting of Families. This is a calling for us to reach out and do something to help those families that have gone through so much. And who are those people that we help in this foundation? We help those who are affected by divorce and separation. We help those who have relationship issues. We help those who have had job loss, loss of a loved one, health crisis. Any kind of traumas that families go through is what we really focus on. But this whole idea of helping divorced and separated was something that we had decided that this was going to be our initial mission. This was kind of our main initial mission that we started with. And so when we unpack all of those different steps of healing, one of the ones that comes out to me the most is prayer. And I would say that for those of you who are on this and listening to this podcast, is that the first step, in my opinion, with any of this and in acceptance of the situation is offering that prayer to help yourself to be healed from what you have gone through with a separation from a spouse. Mickey, just for a few minutes or so, I wondered if you could just talk about the role of prayer in your own life and how it's helped. How can it help those affected by divorce to find some kind of healing?
Well, and I see that with prayer, I feel like prayer is the vessel towards inner peace. And many of the saints have really talked about it. And it's kind of fitting that with our final, well, that's kind of fitting because I was like listening to the prayer of Saint Francis that, to be a channel of peace. And I feel like with God's help, when he works through us, we can never underestimate how he wants us to be peacemakers. Yeah, it's one of the Beatitudes, we hear about from the Sermon on the Mount in the Gospels of Matthew as well as Luke. And I feel like one of the ingredients to peace, whether it's, well, more like peace starts with us than like, as the old Protestant hymn, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me, as that, that chorus goes. But as we look at it a little deeper, it's not just like, stop fighting, anything like that. Well, we do want people to stop fighting. But I think if we look at it a little deeper, we have to understand that we can control, how we confront people, how we go about our spiritual lives. And I think one of the keys to understand God's peace is his prayer.
Yes, so important. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because in this last podcast where we're going to talk about ministry, is that I think one of those initial steps of finding ways that you can help others is to pray about it, reflect about it. Maybe go to Eucharistic adoration and think about how you can use your gifts and talents to help other people. Now, you, our audience, are those who are affected by divorce in some way or fashion. And I just found an article which I thought would be helpful, not only to all of you, but even to Mickey and I. And it's an article on 5 sure ways to get involved in your Catholic Church. And I think this is a good way for you to help to reflect about how you can get involved after you have been hurt or wounded somehow by a divorce or separation. And you can find this article at a website called CatholicNewbie.com. Funny name, but great article. Catholic, NEWBIE.com. And I'm just going to read through some of what this article suggests in finding ways to get involved. And the first one says, it's actually 5 steps. It says to get active and involved. The first step on with anything is to make the effort and be willing to keep trying until you find the right thing. Don't give up after your first activity or 2 or 3 or 4 to find success. Keep on keeping on. And if you can do something for 3 years, just try it. Showing up at Mass, it says here, is not enough to get to know others. So I think that's a good point. They're saying 3 years because sometimes it takes time to really find out about what you like, where you fit in. I mean, I know myself, I've been involved in a lot of different ministries over the years, especially since I had my conversion to a deeper faith. And getting involved in ministry in your own parish is just a great way to meet people too. There's nothing like having people to fellowship with. And especially after this pandemic that we've been through over the last couple years, it is a way to meet people in person. Now, the second one on this article says to choose small group activities. It says you're not likely to get to know people well by attending big events like parish missions. Mass, or even being one of 100 Eucharistic ministers, while these things are wonderful, and Mass, which is critical, there are things to participate in, they're not necessarily the activities that lend themselves to making friends. Select intimate book groups, small committees, small group outings, discussion groups, and Bible studies. I think that's a wonderful way for you to find your niche, is to find those small group activities. And it makes a really good point here that obviously going to Sunday Mass or daily Mass is a beautiful thing. I mean, Sunday Mass is critical for us as Catholics, but you don't always really get to meet and talk to people when you go to Mass. But getting involved in those small group activities really does make a difference. And I know for my husband and I, whatever that could be, I mean, there was a calling at my own church a year or two ago to get involved in our parish school board. And my children happen to be older than grade school. I mean, they're actually out of college now. So who would have guessed that now I'm the chair of the parish community school board. And it's a wonderful way that I've been able to meet people and get involved in ministry. So that's just one little example. I mean, Mickey's very involved in pro-life and has made many friends in that regard. And I've met people through Mickey and even through many of the pro-life activities. So find where it is that you can be of help, especially you've been affected by divorce. Maybe there is some kind of divorce support group around your area. Maybe, just maybe, you might be able to start one, because you can go to Rose Sweet, who's a former board member, and she's a Catholic author and speaker who has done so much work for Catholics affected by divorce, has wrote a book called Surviving Divorce, which actually offers a 12-week program for parishes and dioceses and archdioceses. So you can go to her website and learn more. Again, rosesweet.com, and consider starting your own Catholic divorce support group. Now, number 3 on this list is look for activities that require interactivity. It says, can you help with food prep for something like helping in a soup kitchen, or going on a volunteer outing with a local pantry? Participate in a group study that requires discussion. This is how you'll start to become more than just a face to these people. And again, it just goes back to that idea of in-person gatherings, small group gatherings, as a way to make not just acquaintances, but the gift of friendship, of real Christian friendship. And so I think that's a good thing for you to pray about, think about, not only if you are a participant, but if you decide to be a leader. Maybe there's something that you want to start yourself. Maybe it's related to something to do with people affected by divorce. Maybe it's something else. But whatever it is, just remember to look for activities that require that interactivity. Now, number 4 on this list is to go on a retreat. And it says that if your parish has a retreat, such as, now this article mentions Christ Renews His Parish, which we're not necessarily promoting that on this podcast, but I'm just mentioning that one. It says to do it. Over a retreat where you spend many hours with the same folks, you'll develop a rapport and special camaraderie with some, if not all, of the attendees. And this person in the article says that they highly recommend that Christ Renews His Parish, which, like I said, I mean, I'm reading this article, but we're not necessarily promoting that here on this podcast. But something like a group study. I know that Ascension Press offers so many of those Bible studies. Theology of the Body is also a really good one by Dr. Christopher West. But do some research and find out, is there something that you could do on a weekly basis? Is there something like a retreat that you could consider? Now, I also have to make a shout out too, because our foundation offers both online and also in-person events. Now, this podcast, all of our podcasts are kind of timeless, so you can listen to them at any time. But if you go to the nonnatus.org website, which is our website, under programs and events, you can look under that page and it will list both the ones that are in person and virtual. So please do, check out and see what we have going on. Now, we're taping this podcast in the fall of 2022. So some of the things I'm going to mention on this one might have been already passed, but that's okay. We got new ones coming up. But just to let you know that in October of 2022, October 29th, is that we have the Families in Crisis Retreat at the National Shrine of St. Rita. So please do check that out on our website. And we're also doing a special Advent Reflections Retreat, which is going to be at the Dalesford Abbey in Paoli, PA on Friday, November 25th at 11:30 a.m. And it's also for families in crisis. So again, if you're listening to this podcast before those dates, please do check it out. If it's after, it's okay, because we have a lot more to come. But the one other thing I'd like to mention is a retreat that we have going on in December, which is actually an online. It's I shouldn't call it a retreat. Actually, it's an event. It's called the Eucharistic Summit, Sowing Hope into Broken Hearts, where we have 30 Catholic authors and speakers that will be presenting. It's a virtual event that's going to be on Vimeo.com. It is available through our friends of Patchwork Heart Ministry, Bill Snyder. I'll make a shout out to Bill and say hi, and also Fiat Ministry Network, Kent Kolhosky, and our wonderful friend Jennifer Sinclair, who puts our podcast out all over the place so that you can listen to it. This Eucharistic Summit will be December 6th, 7th, and 8th, and it's featuring Bishop William Byrne of the Diocese of Springfield, Massachusetts, and all kinds of other Catholic authors and speakers, including Mickey and myself. We will also have Gary Zimak, Allison Gingras, William Hemsworth, and so many more. Even our friend Bill Snyder, who's listening to our podcast and have produced this podcast for us. So please do sign up for it at nonnatus.org under Eucharistic Summit. And I also want to mention that this particular podcast or event, I should call it, is going to be in perpetuity. So you'll be able to listen to this even after the event. So you can go to our Philly Nonnatus YouTube channel and listen to our Eucharistic Summit. And that's especially for you who are listening, who are going through a tough time with divorce and separation, that it's time that you need the Eucharist, a time that you need the sacramental life of the church. So please do partake in this free event. Now, number 5 on this list, going back to this article, 5 sure ways to get involved in the Catholic Church, is to learn people's names. And it says that once you meet someone, make an effort to commit their name to memory. Whenever you use their name or give them peace at Mass, use their name. Make a point to ask them how they're doing, or how the weather's treating them, or how their kids are getting along in school. Continue to break the ice until it's broken. Plus, everyone likes to hear their own name. I think that is so true. You know, God calls us by our names. So when we remember people's names and we remember things about them, it's just a wonderful way for us to get involved in ministry, is just to remember those names. So let me read those 5 points again. Is that they are getting active and involved. 2 is choose small group activities. 3 is look for activities that require interactivity. 4 is go on a retreat, so important. And 5 is learn people's names. I was wondering, Mickey, if you could talk about the importance of retreats, because I know that you're a big proponent of that. So for those people listening right now who might be interested in some of our retreats, I didn't know if you had a few words for that.
You know, and I think it's a great point you bring up in regards to retreats, because I think some people may think that you're just running away. Like some people will take it literally, like they just see something from like a war movie or something. But honestly, for many people who want to be spiritually engaged with their faith, this retreats help you, get recharged and meet people who are on the same journey as you. And we did run a in-person retreat actually about a year ago, which we did like a rosary walk around the grounds of Malvern Retreat House, which is outside of Philadelphia, about a 30 to 40 minute drive depending on traffic. And as a really big cheerleader to retreats, I always see it as an opportunity not only just to take a step back from society and to reflect in how can you continue to grow or maybe improve in some areas where you've been lacking. At the same time, as you mentioned a moment ago, and to meet people and to know their names. And I've helped you along the way, quite a bit, whether it was the annual pro-life dinner, the Young Catholic Professionals, which their chapters are growing, by the way, all across the United States. They actually came to Philip. They've been around in Philadelphia for over a year. But I think what it boils down to is that we have to take a step back and realize that, you're not alone in this journey. And there are people that are willing to get you to where you need to go. All you need to do is put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's really beautiful and so true. And I want to thank you. It's so true that Mickey, he's one of these people that he's super involved in the Catholic Church in the greater Philadelphia area where we live. He's a young adult. He knows so many people. He's been wonderful in connecting me and even the foundation to so much that's going on in our own archdiocese. So I just thank him. But, you can kind of be like Mickey in that way too. And we can teach others to get involved. And so I invite you to do that. I have one more reference before we end our podcast that I just found. It's an article that I found called 10 Ways to Get Involved in Your Parish, and it's by reallifeathome.com. And they're real simple. I'm just going to read through them because I think there are simple ways that you can get involved. I mean, number 1 is to pray. Number 2 is to have the right attitude. And I think that's a good one. Number 3 is to read your church bulletin. Simply, it's a simple thing, isn't it? Just to read what's going on in your church bulletin. Number 4 is to call the parish office and find out. Ask your parish secretary. Number 5 is to check the web. Check your parish website. Do they have a parish website? Connect to their Facebook page, your parish's Facebook page, your archdiocese Facebook page. Hey, and to that matter, make sure you connect with us. I have to mention that too, to connect with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation. Our website is nonnatus.org, and we can find us anywhere on social media at St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation, or the other name that we have, especially on YouTube, is Philly Nonnatus, Philly because that's where we're from. So please do check us out on all those platforms. We really appreciate it. Number 6 is start your own idea. And I mentioned that also a little earlier in the podcast. It says, do you have an idea for ministry? Call up the office and talk to your parish priest. Number 7 is grab a friend. And I think what the article is saying here is that have someone, a friend of yours, work with you, because when you have someone to help you, it makes it all that much easier. Number 8 is apply for your parish council. That's another way that you can get really involved, is become a member of the parish council. Number 9 is search the directory. Some Catholic churches have a Catholic directory. Go online, check it out in your archdiocese, Google what's going on, not only in your parish, but in other parishes around the area. And number 10 is real simple. It says to just do it. It says the first step is always the hardest. Find something that catches your eye and give it a try. I think it's a good article. It's very simple, but it's called 10 Ways to Get Involved in Your Parish from reallifeathome.com. Mickey, I think this series has been wonderful because we've gone through all these steps to help Catholics affected by divorce. We've been able to point to resources. We've been able to talk about our own stories. We've been able to invite people to make that pastoral consultation with a Mercedarian friar. And may I mention that we say this on every podcast as an invitation for you to take the time to tell your story to someone who cares. Everything that we do at this foundation is free. We are a Catholic nonprofit 501c3. You can email us at director.srnf, as in Frank, at gmail.com, at nonnatus.org, and just go to our contact form or our priestly consultation form and fill it out. Ask to have an appointment with a priest. We have a special form there. You can have, as I said, you can have as many of these appointments as you need to talk about those things and be guided in the right direction. And sometimes we even get requests to do spiritual direction, which some of our priests are available. So make sure you reach out to us. We care about you. We're here for you. Now, this is our last podcast in 10 tips for Catholics affected by divorce, but we're already in the middle of a brand new series that's called 10 Tips for Healing for Adult Children of Divorce. So be sure to go to our Philly Nonnatus YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that channel and learn more about us. And we are just so grateful to all of you. Would you please share this podcast too with your friends, with your church, with your diocese, with your archdiocese? We really appreciate helping us to get the word out. We also love to do events too. And Mickey and I, after doing this podcast series, will give you and your church lots of topics for us to come and visit and talk about those 10 tips. So if you're interested in Mickey and I coming to your parish community to talk about 10 tips for healing for Catholics affected by divorce, please reach out to us and again at our website at nonnatus.org. Mickey, on that note, would you have any words to say as we end, or about you and I maybe coming to a parish community to do talks?
Well, and I do want to reiterate a couple points you have just made. First and foremost, to those of you who have listened to this 10-part series, we want to thank you for doing this very much. And we want to encourage you to please spread the word. Now, and of course, if this has motivated you, we do want to encourage you to do two things. Number one, if you can give money, that would be great. I mean, I granted, I know we are going through some hard times lately, but you can always give your time. And that's if you get to spend some of your time to volunteer for us, to share our work, the best thing you could do is put a flyer up about our upcoming events, or even our podcast, share it on social media. Those things won't cost you anything whatsoever, believe me. But we do have generous donors who will help us make many of these programs possible, and we want you to do the same. That is number one. Number two, the second thing I would like to say is that regardless of how many years it's been since you were divorced, or you went through a marital crisis, or whatever the case is, your faith will guide you back, and your faith will sustain you, just as sustained Anne and I. And we want to encourage you to not be afraid to be a Catholic in the new millennium. I know with everything that's going on, it may be tempted to say, oh, you know what, I'm going with the world. But you know what? You are not defined by the world. You are defined by God. And the best way you want to be defined by him is how you proclaim him before every person on this earth. So give alms, give your time, volunteer with us. Most importantly, continue to spread the word about us. And finally, if you know someone who has been through separation, divorce, or any kind of marital issues, have them reach out to us. We will help you. And we want you to get involved one way or another.
Amen. Thank you again, Mickey, and thank you to you for your commitment on this podcast. It's been wonderful, and looking forward to what is to come, not only for us at the foundation, but for you listening, and all that God has in store for you, and how much he loves you and cares about you and your healing for you and your family. So we will see you next time. Be sure to tune in. The next one is the 10 Tips for Healing for Adult Children of Divorce. God bless everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. For more information about the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation, visit nonnatus.org or email director.srnf@gmail.com.
The Shroud of Turin is one of the most researched and studied relics in church history, and profoundly impacts many who encounter its mystery.
As a person of faith, looking at it through the eyes of faith, I don't think it can help but touch your heart.
Something that we can look on not only to bolster our faith in those moments of weakness, but also to deepen our faith and our appreciation, our intimacy with Christ.
Join Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry as they examine the science of the shroud through the lens of faith.
Really interesting scientific information that we didn't know about, like the pollen from all the different regions of the world. As the shroud traveled around, it picked that up. Some of the mites, things like that was really interesting to me. I mean, this made you really want to believe it a lot more.
It's impressive. Like humanly, I don't think like that is another level of love. It's not I'm gonna say, like, oh, I love you, I'll give you a chocolate. No. I'm giving you more than my life. I'm giving you my suffering.
Asking both experts and disciples, who do you say I am?
As far as who the man of the shroud is, I, as a person of faith and kind of reviewing the evidence there, it seems that a convincing argument can be made that it's Jesus of Nazareth.
Visit patchworkheart.org/shroud to learn more and get exclusive behind-the-scenes updates for your support.